sometimes you don't even know or you don't even imagine what is behind that. There was one driver that told us that he felt very important because he needed to transport insulin in a freezer to a little girl. The mother told him, I beg you to go that fast because if no, my baby girl will die. So that's what he did. He went very fast and he didn't even matter about transit, inbound. He just wanted to help people. So I think that it's very important for us to get sensible about these topics.
My name is Jochem van der Veer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called TheyDo, the journey management platform for business decision-making. We raised over $50 million and are growing globally. Our enterprise customers include Ford, J&J, the Home Depot, and Pfizer. I mean, wherever you look, understanding customers is key to staying ahead. But in order to do this at scale, aligning so many different teams with the customer journey is incredibly hard, but it is possible. I really wish this podcast existed before we started our company because so many companies are organizing around journeys and there's so much to learn. So in order to share what I'm learning, what I'm hearing with our community, I meet with industry experts. And in my video podcast, I'm here to explore the world of business strategy, design, and journeys, customer journeys, to really get an understanding of how leaders are changing their way in their business. So let's dive into the show. So my guest today is Daniela Carrillo, a powerhouse in customer experience transformation. And she's currently in the CX new modalities as a program manager at Uber. With a passion for empathy-driven design, she dives deep into the why behind decisions. Well, this is great for our podcast. She's bridging the gap between user needs, back-end complexities to craft a beautiful customer and journey. At Uber, she's pivotal in shaping innovative approaches that enhance the customer experience across diverse modalities. And we're going to dig into all of this in today's episode. Daniela, it's a pleasure to have you.
It's totally my pleasure to be here. And thank you so much for that intro. It's amazing.
So tell me about new modalities. Uber obviously is famous for UberX. And when we were discussing this before we started recording, we realized like it might be good to start there. So what does it mean to run a CX program around new modalities? And maybe like what are new modalities in the context of Uber?
Okay, so as you may know, right now, like the Uber's mission, it's focused in reimagining the way the world moves for the better, right? So it's not only like offering one single product to all types of users around the world. So we operate in very different regions. As you may know, we operate in US, in Canada, in all Latin countries, in Europe, India, and other Asian countries. So people's needs are very different around the world. So basically, the new modalities mean that, like how we will be able to move people, not only like paying this set price or using four-wheel vehicles, or not only using a two-wheel vehicle. It's like we are imagining how people's needs impact in our way to try to move them, right? So, for example, there are lots of new modalities around the world. So it's not only UberX. We also think about the environment. For example, that's why we have Uber Planet, right? Or electric vehicles focusing here. We also have two-wheels vehicles like Uber Moto or tuk-tuk in India, for example. We also found a way to move people's needs during the pandemic by creating Uber Courier or Flash right now. That's the name, the official name in LATAM. So it's like a delivery service, but just by the hand of using your Uber app, right? So there are lots of ways to move things. So that's our main focus in new modalities.
You're in Mexico City. Are there specific modalities that work in different countries where it's like, okay, let's copy paste it to this market? Or you mentioned customer needs are so different in different markets. Like, what will be
a good example where maybe something from another market worked really well in Mexico, and another example where that might not be actually working, and you need to really dig into what customers need to understand what works. Can you give some examples for folks listening, like what will be cross-country, cross-geo, and what will be very specific when we talk about those new modalities?
It's a very interesting question because for I think that Mexico City works very different to other countries in Latam. But here in Mexico City, this is like the capital for the business, the ideal business model services. So, for example, we have a modality that it's called Uber Comfort, that it's basically for when you travel from your house to the office, you need to keep working, right? And you can just hold your computer and just be comfortably working in the car while you get from point A to point B. So I think this is one of the main products that it's one of the favorites here in Mexico City. But we do also have some others. For example, in Brazil, they use a lot Uber Moto. Why? Because it's a very fast-paced city. And they do have like very high hills and very short like streets. So they need to move fast. And the only way to do that is traveling by motor, right? So it's a very dynamic environment, and the cities behave very, very different, like considering the geographical situation as well.
Funny story is that when we had the go-to-market team together, we, in one exercise, it was more like an energizer exercise. It was, everyone pull up your Uber app and tell about the rating. And we were stack ranking people based on their Uber rating.
Okay.
And surprisingly, some of us, people that use Uber for work a lot, commuting to customers, to meetings, to potential customers, and they keep working in the cars. So their rating was not that good because, there's a lot of Uber drivers who like to make a conversation and also think that that is part of the experience. And one of the insights, or at least like one of the thoughts that run across is like, yeah, maybe we're just grumpy, staring at our laptops, making calls. And if you're intentional about that use case, if you're intentional about that journey, and you're expected to be picked up, continue working, and dropped off, then you probably get a 5-star rating if you don't do anything weird. But maybe you get a lower rating in a country where it's normal to strike up a conversation with your driver.
Yes, it will. But that's why it's important to use the correct product each time. So I recommend you a lot to use Comfort if it's available in your countries for doing this, because actually you are available like to have or select the driver preferences if you want to have a conversation, or if you want to have a specific temperature in the vehicle, like having the regular temperature, or if you want to have air conditioner. So those are very good options in here, but that's a very interesting exercise.
I love that. What is, when we think about new modalities, what is the customer experience angle to that? Is it mainly focused on really digging into the needs of a specific type of customer in a market and literally designing new modalities, testing, building? Or is it applying the existing ones to them? Like, what is your main focus? Is it designing new modalities? Is it improving the experience of existing ones and catering that to markets? Like, how do you think about customer needs in that context?
So everything is based in UberX, almost everything, I think. But there are lots of different needs around Latin America, specifically talking, because we have very different socio-political, socio-economical contexts. So we have very different, for example, the minimum salary paid in each city, it's quite different. For example, what we earn here in Mexico City, right? For example. But yeah, it's about like understanding a specific cohort of users' needs or of drivers. Like, this is all about giving drivers lots of options to earn money. So if, for example, there is a driver that has 4.98 in rating or 5 stars in rating, it's like, okay, so users like a lot how you drive and how you treat them. So maybe you are available to drive a more luxury car or to drive in a comfort car. So you are able to get users like users that need to keep working. So, for example, this is like the main value proposition. And developing or designing new modalities comes from detecting these data sets and understanding the user's needs or based on what, for example, they tell us in the support side. Because we are able like to deep dive and to understand, and we have like our own metrics to identify what is happening outside. Because I think that lots of people, and specifically like engineers and the product oriented people are thinking about like solving specific issues, but they don't really know what is happening out there. So what we do, or my job in here, is basically to get these insights from the real world and to understand what is happening outside, like trying to help them to get out of their bubbles, to understand what are the real needs, right? Because when a product is launched, we are not perfect, right? So we are in a constant continuous improvement developing phases, but we try to understand what are the main product pain points, and we raise these pain points. We go with product and we tell them like, hey, this is not working correctly. Hey, this feature is not what you were expecting. So it actually is a pain point for drivers, or it actually is a pain point for users. So let's think about in a solution, and let's keep discussing this, right? So every product has very different needs, as it's like they are oriented to very different cohorts of people. Because, for example, we have some low-cost products that as Ubermoto or Tuk Tuk, and we have like elevated costs products such as Comfort or Black in here, for example, in Mexico City or in Brazil as well. And Black,
when you
it's
think
like
about
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so no, this I think it's fascinating because Uber has such a luxury position of having all these data available at such a scale, right? But what you still say, and what I like and see a lot of companies do, is that data tells you what? It's understanding where the problems are, what we're seeing, where we might like to investigate. But then still you need to go out in the real world to understand what people really need. And when you apply that, like, how can companies ensure they're truly listening to their to their customer needs, instead of just following the data and then assuming a bunch of solutions, iterating on them, and ignoring digging in to really uncover the needs? So how can you actually build that as a practice? How can companies truly listen to their customer needs and not get distracted by all the data available?
Yeah, I think that this is an interesting question too, because what I've understand so far in my 4 years in here is that all the teams need to have a specific metric in common. Like, what you are doing, product, is impacting me in my community operations metrics, correct? So we need to find a specific point or a common point that makes sense to all of the teams involved. In my case, for example, it's like if the experience, we have the NPS service and like we have lots of ways to detect what's going wrong with the product. So basically what we measure is experience, right? So if I notice that the experience is going down, I start researching and I have this quantitative data, but I also need to have this qualitative data. So I start deep diving in my tickets, in phone calls, to try to understand what our support teams are doing right or what they are doing wrong. And so, or the automations, that's correct, because we do have these two types of support. But in this case, for example, when I start deep diving into tickets or into phone calls, I start noticing some patterns, and I try to translate these patterns to projects. And then I develop a whole project to identify main insights. I try to set focus groups with specific cohorts or with very different cohorts, because sometimes we tend to have, 10 people that are very happy with the customer service, but we also need to have people that disagrees a lot with our support service, right? So you need to listen to all types of people and to all types of users, because you would be very biased if you only focus in one specific cohort of people. So what we do is to gather these insights, I translate them into actionable items, and we start prioritizing these with product, with operations, with all the areas in here to understand what are the common pain points between the three of us, for example, regarding the experience, because we all three are in charge of developing this magical experience, right? So if, for example, there is something going wrong, I don't know, with the pricing or specifically with the map routes, right? I need to flag this to product and to tell them, hey, you are doing this and this is impacting a lot in the driver's perception of this specific thing, right? So we are in charge of this, but there are teams that work as bridges between my teams that we are focused in the support experience and with the designers, for example. But we try to be very communicated and very connected, and we need to find these metrics in common. That's the only way. I know.
That's a good lesson. Many customer experience teams are actually a little bit detached from reality, both from like what customers need because they're so stuck in surveys and collecting feedback, and detached from the business. So what is moving the needle for the business? So what should we care about, and which initiatives are actually potential needle movers, and how to bring that together. You mentioned magical experience or magic. When you think about that, you mentioned like there's 3 different teams that need to come together, but I believe it's a little bit more than that. Like, who needs to come together to deliver like that magic customer journey, that magic customer experience? Like, what have you found to be true to actually be able to pull that off?
Well, first of all, I think that the ones that are receiving all this hate or all these good things that are our customer support agents. Like, we have very different channels, and we have a very different channel mix to each user. But we need to keep listening them, and we have a very close relationship with them to keep understanding what is working for users and what is working for them, or in the other hand, what is not working for both of them, right? So I think that they are the main ones, and then we are the next bridge. We are called community operations, and we are the ones in charge of designing the policies and all this structure, and to identify which will be the best channel or the best solution or the best refund or the best amount of disappeasement for this specific issue, right? So we design and develop these policies and like these decision trees so the agents can know what to do in specific cases. And then we have the operations team. They are the ones that enable products and the ones that will know in which cities, in which countries, if it will be XPs or something more like controlled based on what product wants to launch. So I think we are like only one team, right? Because one of our main values is like we are one Uber, because we need to think as one single unity. But I think that we all have very different profiles. We all come from very different backgrounds. And that's the interesting part, because we need to be aware of each other's reality and backgrounds, like to keep working together. But I think that would be the main, we will be like the main teams involved in the customer experience per se.
And so we have support from the different channels. Then we have customer experience, or your community operations, where you design the policies and the decision trees for people to follow. Then you have the operations team who enable products. What about product itself? Where do they sit in delivering that magic experience?
Where do they sit? Basically, what they tend to transform our insights, and they try to understand how the market goes based in operations insights, for example, and they try to develop solutions to the current issues, to the current problems. For example, if there is one product that it's lacking of a specific feature, product needs to design it, and then they have their engineering teams that they will develop the code, right? The coding part. But there could be bugs, there could be issues. So they just try to test, but then we need to keep flagging these bugs and these issues to them. Like telling, hey, we had an outage and it's impacting us. So please help us to debug this code, right? So I think that they have a very hard part, because that's a very technical area, and they develop like very technical solutions compared to the rest of us. But and that's also another thing, that they tend to have like very well-designed profiles. Like they are very structured, and sometimes it's hard to get into them, because they only tend to listen based in numbers. And we need to tell them, or to present the information for them in numbers. And that's the only way that we will get into them. So we always need to show impact. I think that that's the main learning so far, to keep improving our relationship with product, for example.
I love that. Actually, this is a good segue to talk a bit about marrying numbers and emotions, right? In customer experience, we're so close to really tapping into what people need, how they feel, what they actually experience, but then translating that back into something that is action-oriented, has to be numbers in many cases. But it sounds like you go way beyond just NPS. Can you give an example of like how you are marrying numbers and emotions, and when a product team goes like, oh, Daniela, this is fantastic, exactly what we needed, we're going to action this right away, stop all the presses, we're going to go for this. Like, what are the ingredients for such a translation between customer needs and the business numbers?
Oof, that's a hard one. But I would say that, for example, we recently had an experience where they wanted to launch a product that used to have lots of errors, because they weren't considering like lots of things that we already knew, because we know our people, right? It's like, you know the area where you work. So we try to flag all of these pain points, but I think that we were very short on time to keep raising this, and we were unable like to raise everything with data, because the product wasn't launched, right? So we needed to test, or we needed to go out and to ask people what would they think if we launch like this specific feature, right? So that's what we tried to do, because we were unable to test because it was a very complex feature. So what we did, it's like, hey, I need to go and ask them directly. So what needs to be done? So let's do this focus group with this specific cohort of drivers, because they have been doing this type of deliveries or trips, that it's very similar to what we will launch. Okay, so let's focus on them. And then we try to develop this focus group, raising all of their concerns and like making the drivers or trying to sensibilize them regarding their current experience with the application, with the app. And we noticed that, for example, they started to get mad on what we were keep asking them. Like, okay, this won't work or this feature won't work, because they started getting mad because they are very sensible about the main pain points, and this feature will enhance or increase this pain point. So this is now cool for them. They are the ones that will be using the product. So, okay. So what we did is developing this roundtable, and afterwards we tried to test the product, but as I mentioned, we were unable to do it. So we went out with one driver and just followed him. And we stayed close to him and to keep understanding how the feature worked with him. So I need to know what are your main pain points now that the feature was launched. Okay, so I need to be close to you. And we stayed with him around for 4 or 5 hours in the Mexico City traffic. It was crazy. But we learned a lot, and we also understood his reality and what is like important for him, right? Like, why are you using the Uber app? Because it's my day-to-day work, because I feel that I'm helping people, because I feel that my job is important, because I'm able to move people. And sometimes you don't even know, or you don't even imagine what is behind that, right? So, for example, I don't know, there was one driver that told us that he felt very important because he needed to transport insulin one time in a freezer to a little girl. So the woman, the mother, just told him, like, I know that you can go that fast, but I beg you to go that fast, because if not, my baby girl will die. Okay, so that's what he did. He went very fast, and he didn't even matter about transit, impounds or anything. So he just wanted to help people, right? So that's what is actually happening outside. And sometimes we don't even know what is happening. So I think that it's very important for us to get sensible about these topics, and it creates a loss on us, this sense, like we need to be very clear on what we need to tell product. Okay, so I think that what we do is to try to set these insights into, like, for example, this feature wasn't working in these main 4 topics. So you can focus in these 4 main topics, and like, this is impacting experience, this is impacting pricing, this is impacting support, this is impacting this. So help me prioritize. What is important for you? What is relevant for you? These are my 4 pain points. All of them are important for me, but let me know what is the most important for you, and let's focus in these 2 at the beginning. So we can keep focusing in the rest of them, but I won't quit of pushing you to keep improving this, right? So I think that's the main thing, like just summarizing the information and focusing on what is important for them and what is important for us and for the users as well.
How do you make sure that the product teams are using or trusting, maybe that's a better word, trusting what you're bringing back to them? Because often the difference between a metric-driven organization where numbers are key and understanding everything, the qualitative feedback, the research, or maybe like even the summary of like just shadowing your driver for hours in traffic, which is giving you a lot of insights. It's still like N is 1, right? So what we're seeing, a lot of data-driven teams almost ignore these kind of studies in some companies. Like, what are the ways that you see your product teams actually trusting the insights that you're bringing back to them? Or what have you found to be useful in bringing that back? Is it just sharing the stories, documenting that, summarizing that? Like, what works to counterbalance like the numbers? Like what really works to bring these stories back to product and they actually trust what you have shared with them?
I think that the main thing here was that we were not able to test. And if they would be able to test, maybe they wouldn't trust us. But it's like, oh, we cannot test. So please go and do your job and raise the more insights as you can. So I think that was key in this specific feature. But talking about like other situations, I would say that it's like that we base our cohort in focusing in the main pain points, that we have these pain points set with data. So they know, and we raise we raise this with them, and they just tell us like, hey, can you, if you develop this focus group or if you do this shadowing, can you test this, or can you test that, or can you ask this to the driver, or can you ask this to the user? So we work together on formulating these questions, and then we get with the answers. And I think that here communication is key, like negotiating and to be very, very aware on each other's needs as well. Like, because I think that product teams won't go and do a shadowing because it's not like their scope. They don't tend to like people. They're engineers. Well, I'm not. I won't like generalize this assumption, but I think that you need to like it. I like a lot what I do, so I like to be very close to people, and I think that they know or they understand my passion, and they just trust us because we have been formulating this relationship. We have been creating it since a long time ago. And now they know that they need from our work to get the most insights as they can. Because I think that we all know which is our main role in the company. And they are aware of this. And this is what structure does. Like setting everything in its place.
Right. So how do you quantify pain? And when a lot of customer experience teams listening, sometimes they struggle with that. There's no tried and tested methods. A lot of companies are doing that in their own way. How do you go about quantifying the pain points and more importantly, like stack ranking them? So do you keep like a repository or a database of like, this is my stack rank priority of pain points split by cohort? We have more advanced analytics that help us do that. Like, what are some of the key components to quantifying pain?
Okay, so I think that talking about data per se, it's that we have lots of ways to categorize data. Lots of ways. Like we have these decision trees, and everything is connected to our knowledge bases, to our processes and policies. So we are able to granulate data as we want. That's amazing. Like of working in a very big tech company, right? So we are able to granulate and to deep dive as much as we can. That's the main thing. So after having this granulated info, we just focus in the ones that will impact the most. And we try to set, for example, cohorts based on this categorization. So, for example, I don't know, let's do a cohort from divers that complain about this specific issue, that it's like the most impacting one for this specific product. Okay, so let's do the focus group with them, and we start listening them, and then we start asking, for example, hey, in this feature, in this product, in this date, what happened? And what was the main root cause of you raising lots of tickets? Oh, I remember that day. And they start telling lots of things. And then it seems that all of the drivers experience the same situation, for example. So we try to take a lot of notes and to have this active listening with them to understand like between the lines as well, right? Because it tends to be something beyond that of the things that you are listening to. It's like we need to be able to read between the lines and to understand between the lines. And I think that that's the way that we can quantify, like setting the granulated data, setting the granulated cohort. And it's like, this was the root cause. There you go. There you go. So, yeah, it's very interesting, but it's a blessing to have lots of data, lots of granulated data.
So what does the reading between the lines, the listening mean? Like, what do you do to read between the lines? Is that a learned skill? Is that techniques that you train people on? I'm playing dumb here. Obviously, I know a few of those things, but like, what does it really mean to read between the lines when the data might insinuate the pain point is pretty clear? We know exactly where and when it happened. We know the cohort of drivers. And again, it's pretty easy to assume that we know, but yet reading between the lines is key. Like, what do you do?
It's like, okay, my background is I'm communicologist. So I think that I'm passionate about communication, but I'm also passionate about sociology and anthropology. So I read a lot about this, and I try to get very involved on the situation to fully understand the context. I like to investigate what is the actual situation that the drivers are living, what is happening politically talking about, and economically and socially as well. So I think that, for example, we also try to ask, hey, where do you regularly move? Or where do you regularly like to do your trips? What are the main zones where you like to move? And that also gives you a lot of information that maybe they don't know that you are getting. But for example, you won't get like the same information from drivers or from users that move in the A, B zones from a specific city than from drivers that will drive or users that move from in the C and D zones. What I mean with A, B, it's like the socioeconomical context, like how wealthy a zone is or how poor a zone is. So that lots of different things happen there. Or if, for example, there is a road that has hills, or I don't know if that it's a red zone and there are lots of cartels or, I don't know, gangs that live in there. So it's very different. And I like to be very informed. I like to investigate. And I think that I also like to share this context with my colleagues for us to be in the same line. And like after we do these focus groups, we try to share and to fully understand what happened in there. And lots of things arise in there. I like a lot working with my team, actually. I'm like an individual contributor right now, but I like a lot the teamwork and how the synergy could be created when you work with the correct people.
What is the way to avoid some of the bias in working with people? Because ultimately data is one thing, but there's also the biases that we have, especially when you know that the product team wants to get this feature validated or wants to basically get like the thumbs up to roll it out or to start building it in the first place. Like, how do you avoid bias in those situations?
I think that this is something that I also feel blessed about working in this company, because they promote a lot diversity and like to consider very different backgrounds from each one of us. Like there are people that went to private schools, and there are people that, like me, that we had public education, but we have the hunger to keep learning and to keep providing very different perspectives to the company, right? So I think that I also like to request feedback from different teams, not only from the customer experience teams, for example. I also like to request feedback from the operational teams, from the legal teams, from the marketing, from any background that you can imagine, because it's not only like CX, but I think that sometimes like avoiding the bias also, it's related to the context. And if you show, hey, in Mexico City, there is the first time that we have a president, a women president, a woman. So this impacted in this specific topic with this specific cohort of drivers. So this is something that someone else tried to research, but it was a formal research. So I also try to consider external researching for this, but I think that diversity is key for this. Like, you cannot just focus in what you think that it's right. It's like getting feedback. It's super important as well.
If you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave a review. It makes all the difference. The Experience Edge podcast is where I interview business leaders, CX pioneers, and the best designers who share their insight on creating business impact, having an edge on the customer experience. If you want more exclusive content and behind-the-scenes access, check out the Experience Edge podcast on YouTube and LinkedIn so you don't miss a thing. Now let's get back to the conversation.
What are some of the pitfalls that there might be in a company that has so many data available to work with? Not many companies have all their data available to be able to segment it down all the way to the most granular level. But even having all your data available comes with maybe problems or other issues that we can't foresee. Like, what are some of the pitfalls that you're seeing with having so many data available?
Sometimes I think that the main one would be asking the right questions. Like, sometimes you have so much data that you don't know where to start. But I think that having this control on what you want to get and focusing on what you do, because, for example, I can have data from product, I can have data from operations and from other areas, but I need to focus on my data. If I need to find something else that could be managed, or I can help myself formulating this question based on products data, I will do it, but only as support. I won't focus on that. But I think that asking the right questions, and sometimes that people don't know where to start, like formulating these questions. But yeah, it would be that.
Talk to me about this. Like, what does it mean to not only ask the right question, but like formulating the right question? This is the art. This is the science. Like, what does it mean to you? Like, do you have a framework for developing the right question? Like, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah. So I think that this is one of my team's main strengths, because this is the thing. Like, for UberX, everything is, or sometimes everything is at the right place. They know what to look for. They know what to search. They know where to focus. But for us, it's like, okay, so we need to start deep diving into this specific situation. Yes, we do have a methodology. We are very, very supported by data science teams. And what we needed to do in the last year was to get a lot of mentorings from their side, like to keep understanding how they formulate their own questions. And yeah, we formulate hypotheses. We try to discard some possible hypotheses that based on this data specifically, but we do have a methodology, like the pyramid methodology, the hypothesis methodology. So we need to keep learning, because I think that right now, I don't know, it was almost a year ago when I had this mentoring, and I think that I don't know anything at all right now. So I need to keep learning and to keep improving my data science skills. But I think that this is something that could tend to be very different depending on the product and on the team. And yeah, that would be all, I think.
What is the pyramid methodology? What is that?
Like to fully understand what is going on with this data and formulating your questions, like why this is happening, what is happening, who is involved, what could be triggering this specific situation. It's like drowning everything, or trying to granulate as much as you can, but to get into one specific cohort, or to a very specific reason, or to a very specific amount of information, like asking a lot. And
so this is on the data science piece. So then you know who to involve in your, let's say, focus group. And again, you need to formulate the questions for your focus group.
yeah.
What is your approach to preparing for a good interview that gets you the insights that you're looking for?
So the first thing that I do is like to gather all the customer experience stakeholders' inputs. Like, hey, product, what would you like to ask? Hey, ops, what would you like to ask to this cohort of drivers? Hey, teams, in your perspective and under your experience, what are the main questions that you could ask regarding this specific topic? So once I have all what we want to know, I think that this is another ability that I recently tried to develop myself, because I have my best friend. She is a facilitator, so she tends to do lots of sessions with very different types of people just to sensibilize them. And I think that I learned a lot about her regarding this specific topic, like because she gets very insightful outcomes from this. And what I did in some of the roundtables, in the past roundtables, was like to being very, very simple with the users. You cannot ask them like very specific questions, because you could be biasing their outcomes, right? It's like, hey, for example, there is another methodology that it's called the stop, start, and keep doing things, right? So you only need to ask your cohort, like, hey, based on your experience and talking about this specific product or issue or feature, what would you stop doing? Or what would you like the most? What would you start doing? And there is a correlation between these three questions. It's like you need to start like sensibilizing them in understanding what is good, what is currently going correctly with the app or with that specific feature. And then you will do like, try to go deeper in the pain points and what we should stop doing. So that's where they are going to getting start mad or sad. And then it's like connecting these dots with the keep and the stop doing things. How would you propose a solution for this specific issue based on what is going correctly or what is right in the app right now, right? So there is like one abbreviature that is called Keep It Simple, Stupid.
KISS, right?
Yeah, the KISS one. So you just need to be very simple on what you want to get from people, because they don't have the technical knowledge that you have, they won't know. Or sometimes I saw in some other roundtables that people was asking like, hey, what do you think about this feature? It's like, does that exist? It's like, dude, you won't get anything if you keep asking this. So, I think that would be my methodology.
I think this is a good example because, on the one hand, you have very leading questions, like what are you doing with this specific feature and how would you do it differently than people give random answers. But there's also the science piece where people go to ask a question, they do deep research on formulating the perfect question and then try to see if that works. But what you're actually saying makes a lot more sense. Keep it simple. Ask the dumb questions and let them tell you exactly what they needed. Then I think what you're also sharing is that facilitation, helping people to feel comfortable, that they have a safe space to share, and anything that they say is good, nothing is bad, and they can just talk the way they used to talk. That's great. The other piece that I think is fascinating in your case, I don't know if you're familiar with jobs to be done as a methodology. There's a lot of practices around the interview process in that context where to really understand what triggers people to do something, they're setting the stage in the minds of a person gets the best results. So let's say you're interested in a driver, then what you shared is we have that data to understand it was this day, it was that ride, it was this situation, it was this ticket that you raised. So you can really bring them back to that specific moment and then help them vividly remember where they were driving, what kind of customer they had or parcel they were delivering or whatever. But I think that piece is also key and foundational actually in getting people to say what they really mean, what they do and what they actually have experienced versus giving you some polite answer because they're part of your focus group. So those two things, like they stand out a lot. So keeping it simple and bringing them back to the actual moment where things started. I want to shift gears a bit to understanding what having an edge on experience means to you, because solving pain points and improving features is not the whole of customer experience, right? It's part of it. But really having an edge, especially when you're developing new modalities and figuring out what people need beyond UberX, this plays a critical role. Like what will be an example of where with the work you're doing, you think your team has developed truly an edge on the customer experience? Does anything come to mind? Any example you want to share?
I think that what comes directly to my mind right now, it's on how would you make faster the support experience. Like people right now is tend to have everything now, right? I watch a stand-up like recently where, for example, Amazon brings you that, right? It's like, I want it now. I want my package to have, I want my package tomorrow. I want it now. So immediately is something that I think that our current generation and our current global situation is something, well, it's outstanding, right? So we have the option to make the support immediate for people. So I think that learning a lot about on our current resources and the upcoming resources, it's a must in the customer experience side. So, for example, I was listening to one of your podcasts before. I think it was Steven. Like he was talking about AI, right? So I think that this is something that you cannot just close your eyes, because to be honest, that part is something that was very scary for me, like some months ago, because, you tend to think about like RoboCop and Terminator and I don't know, lots of movies that tend to guide you to a very dark place. But when you learn how to use it for good purposes, it's like you need to to use it because you need to provide the best support experience to your users. And if AI will help you to do this, let's use it. So I think that we have lots of different teams, of global teams, that are researching all the time. And this is very important because how they cascade this information is very important and relevant for us to try to solve these pain points, but also improve the experience. Like, not only it's like there are some products that everything's going right with them, right? So what's next? Okay, so let's make support faster. Let's improve this specific metric related to customer satisfaction, to the NPS surveys, to, I don't know, let's try to provide a differentiation regarding the competitors. For example, like, what are we doing correctly that they are not? Let's enhance this part. Let's improve this. Or, I think that technology, this technological part, it's the main thing that comes right now to my mind.
Do you believe that ultimately the entire support experience for your drivers can be AI only? And a follow-up question would be, if not, where does human interaction still make a meaningful difference in, let's say, the foreseeable future where this will play out? So what's your take on that? Will the future of AI or support be completely AI in case of Uber? Or where do you think humans are still going to be essential in the mix?
Oof. This is a tricky question because, of course, that I think that everything could have AI or could be AI because when there's machine learning as well, I think that we have the opportunity to iterate accordingly to the situation. But I think that we still have lots of sensitive topics to onboard, especially in Latin countries and in some other regions that needs to be handled still by humans. Why? Because, I don't know, if you are handling a safety issue and someone died in an accident, for example, how will AI will handle with this, right? So I don't know if there are some scripts or something related that could help people to say a small there, but that's it. But talking to someone that already lived a similar situation, and empathy will be on top of like all AI that you can imagine. And I think that specifically talking about Uber's environment, safety issues we won't be able to just to get away of humans regarding this specific topic. So for some others, yeah, I think that refunds, appeasements, developing specific policies, doing some pre-checks, everything could be AI. But safety issues and human-only issues and empathy is crucial for our support.
I want to do an exciting lightning round where I ask you about specific journeys in your life, and you don't need to take them from Uber. You can take them where you were a consumer, part of that, or any other form. I want to ask you about your first journey, your last journey, your best journey, and your worst journey. Are you ready?
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So what is the first journey that you vividly remember in your career, in your life? What was the first customer journey?
Buying tickets for a concert.
All right. Pretty straightforward experience. Anything notable about that? Or like that was it?
Yeah, I think that it's been a very different experience overall, but I remember when I bought my first ticket with my own money, with my own credit card, debit card. In that time, I didn't have a credit card, but it was a mess from my side because I wasn't like used to buy something through the internet. So I was a child, almost, well, not a child, but technology wasn't that developed as it is right now. But I think that they have been improving a lot their experiences so far. As we only know, Ticketmaster is the monster, but I've also bought lots of tickets with some other independent platforms. Oof. And I could say that I've lived some of the worst journeys with them as well. But I like a lot live music, so always buying tickets, it's something that thrills me a lot. And
So
I think, yeah, that's...
talk to me about the worst journey. Was it also a ticket buying journey or any other customer journey that comes to mind that was absolutely the worst in your life?
Let me think about another one. I would say that it was related to buying tickets for an airplane. My worst experience was buying tickets with a Colombian airline that actually they declared themselves out of the market, and they didn't deliver the money. So I think that the way how they handled with the chaos and with everything was very wrongly addressed. And it was very stressing because it was a lot of money for lots of users, and like not getting any point of contact or anything related. It was like, how will I solve my issue? It was a lot of money. So I think that was one of the worst that I remember so far.
What about your best customer journey you ever had or maybe created? What was the best one?
Oh, I can answer for both questions. The best journey that I have so far is with Amazon, actually. Because if they don't find you, you will have some other deliveries the next upcoming days. And they ask you for a preferred hour. So it was quite easy to return an item with them. Or, for example, in the holidays, they tend to lose lots of packages. And I was always trying to contact them. It was very easy. And they just told me like, hey, your package was lost in the way, so we will return your money back. That's it. One touch, one interaction. That was everything. So I think that they do have a very, very good support. And the best journey that I have created, I think it was related to a premium situation. Well, some premium products that we have here at Uber, and how to onboard a specific situation regarding the driver's professionalism. For example, it's like, we can automate this, so let's do it. And it only worked as a proposal because eventually I left managing the premium products. But I think that it was so easy to identify the data and to think in this continuous improvement way or methodology to just solve an issue in a very easy way, in a very easy interaction.
What about your last journey that you've been part of?
My last journey. Whew. I think that it was with a rental car company here in Mexico. Sometimes it's a pain to rent a car in different companies, but I wanted to rent this car to travel to my hometown for 9 days. And it tends to be very, very expensive sometimes to rent the car for more than 1 or 2 days. But it was very easy to do it with this company because when they tend to have like these loyalty programs, right? So if you are a recurrent client, you will get easier ways to rent and to pay and to like to raise your documents and etc. So I think that was the last one. But yeah, that's what I can think about right now.
The examples you give are maybe telling. I don't know if you notice, it's all about removing friction, keeping it simple, one touch, but also in the rest of the conversation, what came on top was like your focus on simplicity, using the data, and to really empathize with people. It's not hard. It's just about consistency and doing it over and over again. So Daniela, it was phenomenal to have you on the show and share your perspective with us. Thank you for joining me. If you have people listening and want to hear more about you or your work, what would be a great place to find you?
Right now, you can contact me through LinkedIn. I'm available to answer your doubts, messages, or anything that you want to ask about.
All right. Thank you for joining me today, Daniela.
Thank you, Johan. Nice to meet you. Ciao.
All right, and that's it. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this valuable today, don't forget to subscribe to The Experience Edge on your favorite podcast channel, leave a review, and share it with your team. I'd be delighted. Today's episode was brought to you by Daydo, the AI journey management solution for enterprise. To have an edge on your business strategy and to know why your customers do what they do, visit daydo.com and explore more resources to accelerate your customer experience game. And remember, the journey to creating customer-centric impact never ends, and here's always a new edge to discover in doing things differently. Next week, new episode. Until then, keep pushing the edge and stay inspired. See you in the next episode.